Hello, I'm Dr. Sara Renner, and I would like to talk a little bit about this piece I've been working on that's been quite an exciting project and quite an undertaking, and I would love to share a little bit about it with you all. And this piece is called Xantippe's Rebuke by Mary Jane Leach, and it is written for solo oboe and 8 pre-recorded tracks of oboe. So we have 9 oboes being played by one performer. And so basically the score has each of the different tracks, 1 through 8. And I went through and recorded each of those and put the solo line on top of it. But it wasn't as simple as it sounds. To talk a little bit about the process that I used to put this piece together, I started thinking that I could just take each of these solo lines or the track lines and just do it, record it, one take, just layer each track on top of each other, and that'll be it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Reveals many things that you don't really think about when you're trying to blend and play in tune with yourself as opposed to other people. And so there were lots of intonation things I had to work out, little rhythmic inconsistencies that needed to be addressed. And so I stopped and I thought, why don't I take the structure of the composition itself and use that to structure how I record the piece? So the work in itself is rather, it's got a minimalist feel to it. It's very hypnotic and very trance-like almost. It's got some crunchy intervals in there. It's got some polyrhythms that go on in there. And so I started to really dissect the score a little bit and broke things down into different patterns. And would take each pattern and I would label it and just take that chunk, whether the pattern was, say it was 2 measures. I would record it and I would save it into another file, like I have a little bank of all of these different patterns, or long tones, which also make up a few of the pre-recorded tracks. And so that way I could go through the score and find every time I needed to use pattern number 1 and say, here's pattern number 1, I'm going to place it right where it needs to go, right here. And if it repeats 8 times, I can copy and paste it or adjust it to where it goes 8 times. So for example, one of those patterns that you would hear and I would just take that chunk and I would record it and I would place it wherever it needed to go. And so I would do that for the entire score, the entire piece. So I had a whole bunch of different patterns and different long tones. Started with the more rhythmic patterns first, and then realized I have no basis of pitch here. So I went back and I recorded the long tones first to establish a sense of pitch that I could relate to. The work revolves around a low B flat, and so I would record that and a couple other different intervals that were in there and have headphones on. So I would play that track in my head and record the rhythmic tracks over it so that I had a basis of where I could place the intervals that I needed. And that was very helpful. That made the process go a little bit more smoothly. but it was definitely an adventure going through all of that process. And once all of that was finished, and there's a call for the score to pan the track, so you've got some coming out from the left side to the center and then to the right, so you've got this whole surround sound effect. Then you can add the solo line on top of it, which if you've ever done any piece with electronics, keeping track of the pulse is extremely important, because there is no give and there's no take. It's either there or it's not, because the recording isn't going to change. So recording the pre-recorded tracks in a way to where you can hear the articulations, to where you can set up that pulse, is really what you have to rely on in order to place the solo line right where it needs to be. And then once you get all of that, then you can just sing out on this solo line. There are so many opportunities where you can, within the beat, do a little stretching, do a little pulling, a little pushing, kind of going for those crunchy intervals that you get. There's more freedom involved with the solo line, and it's composed in such a way that you can just float on top of this soundscape that you create, that the performer creates. And so my goal, one of the things I worked on as I went through this, and checking balances and doing trial recordings, was to try to see if I could blend the live oboe into the pre-recorded tracks as much as possible, so that it was really kind of a mystery as to who was playing, whether it was live Sara, or if it was Sara track number 4 or Sara track number 8, and just kind of seeing how the interplay works and really blending with that. So that was also something that was really unique and interesting to explore. So this piece and this project was really, really incredible. And I would just like to thank Mary Jane Leach for composing and contributing such a unique, one-of-a-kind work to the oboe repertoire. And if you are an oboist, I encourage you to check this piece out and to just dive into it. It's really worthwhile, and it just there's so much beauty and so much. You'll just have to listen. So I hope you enjoy this very live, very unedited. I think there's some cat noises toward the end there. So I tried to make it as live as possible. I hope you enjoy this video and this recording, and I look forward to the day where I can play this live, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I sincerely hope you enjoy Xantippe's Rebuke by Mary Jane Leach. Thank you.